We will cover in this video the 4 rules of design, which will be quite visual in this case, but could apply to any process of design. Understanding these rules of design will allow you to probably refine your own presentations, for instance, if you're presenting on PowerPoint or any other software, but as well to see what works or doesn't work in the communication tools you're developing. So see you in a second, the 4 rules of design. There are 4 rules of design: contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. I will cover each of them individually, but you can already face the 4 words together. Contrast is a difference between two things, two objects. When you want to apply contrast, it means you want to emphasize one thing over another. If they were all of the same color, for instance, or the same size or the same shape, you wouldn't see the difference. But by putting, for instance, black on white or white on black in this particular slide, I already emphasize one element, the 4 in 4 rules of design. Repetition is the fact that things repeat or are consistent or do not repeat, and you start noticing it. The more they repeat, the more the design seems flowing. The less they repeat, and the more it is difficult for you to understand the consistency of the whole piece. Alignment, that's maybe the one we understand the most intuitively. When things are aligned or are not aligned along certain lines in your document or in your field of view. So usually we use a line which is horizontal or a line which is vertical to align the different elements. We will see concrete examples of that. And proximity, finally, a beautiful, beautiful principle of design which relates to how close or how distant things are and how logically we start to interpret them in completely different ways. So let's take contrast. As I said, this is the difference between two different elements. In this case, you immediately see that 3 of the words are in white, while the word contrast is in black. So the word contrast is in contrast with the rest. So we notice it more because we are driven to look at the disturbing elements in a piece. That would be the same thing than looking at a big white board and one point in the 99.99% of the whiteboard would attract your attention because it is different from the rest. Alignment is a pretty natural principle to understand, as I said. When things are not aligned, we immediately perceive it. So I actually drew the lines that could go through that particular slide, and you see that it doesn't correspond. So the lines of alignment that do not cross any of the other words. It is kind of disturbing for a human being because we like structured things, and especially when these are artificial constructs, things that another human being has done. So the main possibility for us is to align things, whether to the left, when we are talking about text, this is called justified left, or it could be in the center, if we want to actually move everything into a more formal position, or it could be to the right. And in this case, we have a more modern and different take. But at every single moment, you've seen that I've aligned the 4 words to one specific virtual line. You don't need to show it, but it exists in the mind of the person that look at the design. A third principle, repetition. So when you start to see things which are not consistent, you start to notice a problem. And in this case, I've disturbed the order of colors and I've disturbed as well the typefaces. So repetition itself is not repeated. So what does it say about the designer? Well, it's whether to put emphasis on one particular element or when there are too many different elements and no repetition. It tells a little bit you might be an amateur designer. A good designer never makes this sort of mistakes unless he wants to show something. But it is unfortunate that I see this mistake represented again and again in most of the conferences here in Brussels, for instance. The final principle, proximity, is amazing. It is amazing because it's not only visual, it's perceptual and conceptual. So if you look at proximity in this particular slide, what happens? Repetition and proximity are much closer one to another. So we start to logically associate them one to the other. We tend to think they behave together. They are logically connected. If now I move proximity somewhere else, Here I understand it is isolated, it is different, it is an outcast. And if I again change the proximity of the words, I have the impression to have conceptually the same relation between repetition and contrast and alignment and proximity, just by changing their space, their position on the screen. We could do that a lot. We could do that actually with small circles. Here they could form a pattern. But if I start to just move one closer to the other, I have a group. I have two individuals against another number of individuals. And you could tell a whole story by just moving these points in space, because proximity makes you think about grander concepts. In this case, I have a small tribe on the left and two people trying to join this tribe, and the third one who's a little bit of an outcast. I'm just playing with 6 little circles, but your brain is already inventing a complete story. So what does it mean for the European elections? Well, to be frank, that doesn't mean much. Designing is a full-time job, and it's something you should do every time you communicate, whether it's for the European elections or not. It's a set of skills that takes years to refine. You can do this first step of designing work by thinking of these 3 points. Know why you communicate, why your organization communicates, why you're publishing whatever report, video, anything. In the first place, why do you do that? The second part of it is know exactly to whom you talk. Do you try to help that person? Do you try to make his life harder? That could be a case. Well, in any case, you need to know who are you talking to. And the third one is my advice: hire a designer. Hire someone who's been honing his craft for years, because that's going to speed up your whole process and workflow. Hire an agency eventually, which are a collection of designers in a small space, and brief them correctly about why you're doing that. If you can pass the message why and to whom you are talking to, then you will have an amazing result in your communication tools. Thank you very much, and see you next week.